The year was not very far in the future, but the world had already changed in ways no one had expected. For decades, humanity had wondered if they were alone in the universe, and then the answer came in a way that shocked everyone. The Galactic Council, a collection of many alien civilizations, announced that Earth had been discovered and invited to join a great union of species. The announcement was full of promises: peace, technology, medicine, and knowledge beyond imagination. Yet with all the excitement, there were also demands. The Council did not want Earth to simply watch from the outside. They wanted humanity to take part in a cultural program that involved exchange and direct living together. The Council called it the Intercultural Exchange Program. The program sounded simple at first. Each member world had to send young representatives to live with families on other planets. They were to learn, adapt, and share their own culture while understanding the ways of others. On Earth, the news spread quickly, and most people thought only a small number of chosen families would host these alien visitors. That was until the new law was passed. The law declared that every household on Earth must participate in the program. Whether someone liked it or not, they had to welcome an alien into their home. Governments across the planet struggled with the details, but the Galactic Council's orders could not be ignored. Humanity was too small, too new, and too unprepared to resist. They had no choice but to follow. When the news reached ordinary people, the reactions were mixed. Some were excited, imagining the chance to learn from other worlds, to see strange beings in their own kitchens, and to hear stories from across the stars. Others were afraid, worried that aliens would spy on them, control them, or simply not understand human ways. There were protests in many cities, but nothing could stop the law. A date was fixed, and representatives from different alien races were sent to Earth in waves of ships that glittered like silver stars in the sky. People gathered on rooftops to watch, cheering or whispering with nervous voices. The world felt like it was standing on the edge of something huge, and nobody could predict where it would lead. Among the millions of families preparing, there was one man who thought he would never be chosen. He lived in a small city, worked an ordinary job, and kept to himself most of the time. His name was Daniel, and his life was simple. He did not think of himself as special in any way, and when he first heard the announcement, he laughed and told his friends there was no way the government would send aliens to his home. Yet fate had a strange sense of humor. Weeks later, an official letter arrived at his doorstep. The letter explained in plain words that his household had been selected to host not one, but 2 alien representatives. It claimed that this was due to a clerical error but could not be changed. Daniel read the letter 3 times, trying to make sense of it. His heart beat fast, and he felt both panic and disbelief. As the date of arrival came closer, Daniel's small apartment looked less and less ready. He tried to clean and prepare, but how does one prepare for aliens? Would they eat human food? Would they need special beds? Would they breathe the same air? The government gave him a thin manual with instructions, but the words were vague. All he knew was that the 2 visitors were both considered young women in their cultures, and were sent as part of their species' promise to participate. The manual said they would arrive with translation devices and some of their own belongings. Beyond that, he was on his own. The night before they arrived, Daniel could not sleep. He stared at the ceiling, imagining strange shapes walking into his living room, speaking in voices he could not understand. He thought of his neighbors who had already been whispering and gossiping when they saw the letter. Some joked that he would become famous on social media. Others warned him that aliens might take over his life. Daniel did not know which was worse. All he knew was that tomorrow his world would no longer be the same. When the morning came, the air outside felt heavy with expectation. Streets were filled with people watching the skies. Governments had announced the exact times when shuttles would land in different cities. Daniel stood outside his apartment, clutching the letter and trying to stay calm. His neighbors stood with him, pointing upward. A bright light appeared in the clouds, slowly growing larger until a sleek shuttle descended with silent grace. It looked nothing like human aircraft, smooth and glowing, almost alive. The crowd gasped as it settled in the middle of the street, its surface reflecting the sunlight like a mirror. A door opened, and 2 figures stepped out. They were not human, yet there was something graceful and familiar in the way they moved. Both carried small bags, and their eyes scanned the crowd with curiosity. One stood tall and straight, her movements calm and precise, as if she had practiced every step. The other looked around with wide eyes, smiling at everything as if the whole world was a wonder. The crowd whispered loudly, some taking pictures, others hiding behind doors. Daniel felt his chest tighten as the two figures walked directly toward him. He realized in that moment that this was no dream, no rumor, no faraway news story. This was his new reality. The taller one spoke first. Her voice clear thanks to the small gulmost, as if they were reflecting the light in a way human eyes could not. The taller one walked slowly, examining every detail of the room. She touched the edge of the sofa, ran her fingers across the bookshelf, and looked at the curtains with quiet interest. Her movements were sharp, precise, and almost military. Daniel felt as if she was recording everything, storing it away in her mind. The other one, shorter and brighter in spirit, immediately rushed to the window and gasped at the sight of cars moving on the street below. She pressed her hand against the glass and laughed like a child. "My name is Liara," said the tall one at last, her voice steady through the translator at her neck. "I will be observing the human household for the council." She nodded slightly as if bowing. Then she looked at her companion. "And I'm Kaylee," the other one said quickly, spinning around from the window. "We're going to have so much fun here." She stretched her arms as if to embrace the whole room. Daniel forced a smile, unsure how to respond. "Welcome," he said. This is my home." They both looked at him in silence for a moment. Liara gave a small nod while Kaylee tilted her head, studying him as if he were the alien, not them. He felt his face grow warm under their curious eyes. The day passed with awkwardness. Daniel tried to show them where everything was: the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom. He explained the stove, the refrigerator, the sink, and even the light switches. Liara listened carefully, memorizing each detail while Kaylee interrupted constantly with questions. "Why does water come from here? Why do you cook food with fire when you have electric light? Why do you keep pictures of other humans on the wall? Are they family?" Daniel answered as best as he could, though sometimes he had no idea how to explain simple human habits. At one point, Kaylee pulled open the refrigerator and gasped at the sight of so much food stored in one place. She poked at an apple, sniffed at a bottle of milk, and nearly dropped a jar of pickles. Liara scolded her quietly, reminding her that they were guests and should behave with dignity. Kaylee only laughed and took a bite from the apple, juice running down her chin as she declared it delicious. By evening, the neighbors could no longer hold back their curiosity. One by one, they knocked on the door, bringing excuses to see the aliens. Some claimed they wanted to welcome them. Others brought small gifts like fruit or bread, and some simply peeked from behind the doorframe. Liara stood tall and formal when introduced, speaking politely but briefly. Kaylee, on the other hand, shook hands eagerly, asked everyone's names, and even tried to hug a startled old woman who nearly fainted. Daniel felt torn between pride and embarrassment. His quiet apartment had become the center of attention, and he was not sure he liked it. That night, Daniel prepared 2 beds in his spare room, though it was barely large enough for one. He had borrowed a folding cot from a friend, but it looked flimsy. When Liara inspected the room, she accepted it without complaint, laying her bag neatly at the foot of the bed. Kaylee, however, flopped onto the cot with such force that it creaked dangerously. She rolled around, laughing as if it were a playground. "This is perfect," she announced. Daniel left them to settle in, but he could not sleep easily. Through the thin wall, he could hear them speaking in their own language, the translator off. Their voices rose and fell like music, one calm and steady, the other bright and fast. He wondered what they were saying. Were they judging him? Were they sending secret reports back to their people? He turned in his bed, staring at the ceiling again, his mind filled with restless questions. The next morning brought more challenges. Liara woke early, standing in the kitchen like a soldier waiting for orders. Kaylee stumbled out later, her hair messy, yawning loudly. Daniel tried to make breakfast, frying eggs and toasting bread, but he had no idea if aliens could even eat such things. He placed plates on the table nervously. Liara studied the food, then cut the toast carefully and ate in silence. Kaylee grabbed the toast with her hands, took a huge bite, and declared it the best thing she had ever tasted. She even dipped the toast into the egg yolk and licked her fingers with delight. Daniel laughed despite himself, and for the first time since their arrival, he felt the tension ease. Maybe this would not be so bad after all. But then Kaylee asked suddenly, "Daniel, why do humans live in small homes when there is so much land outside? Why do you need rules for everything?" Her questions were innocent, but Liara gave her a sharp look as if warning her not to dig too deeply. Daniel hesitated before answering. That's just how we live. We have many people, many cities, many systems. It works for us. Kaylee seemed to accept it, but Liara's eyes lingered on him, thoughtful and unreadable. For the first time, Daniel felt a strange chill. It was not only curiosity that had brought them here. There was something more, something hidden behind their calm and cheerful faces. As the day stretched on, Daniel realized his life had truly changed forever. His home was no longer just his own. It was a bridge between worlds, a place where laughter, silence, questions, and secrets mixed under one roof. And though he tried to act normal, he could not escape the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far greater than he could imagine. The days that followed were anything but quiet. Daniel's life, once simple and predictable, was now filled with constant surprises. Sharing his home with two aliens was not just unusual, it was exhausting. Every small task became a lesson in patience and explanation, and every object in the apartment seemed to spark either curiosity or confusion. Liara treated the situation with calm discipline. She asked questions about human systems, laws, and traditions. She took notes on a small glowing tablet that she carried everywhere, recording details as if every word Daniel spoke would later be studied by her people. Sometimes she would sit by the window for hours, silently watching the city below, her eyes following the flow of traffic and the movement of people. Daniel wondered what she thought of it all, but she rarely shared her opinions. Kaylee was the opposite. She treated everything as a toy or a mystery to be solved. One afternoon, Daniel found her in the bathroom, filling the sink with water and letting bubbles rise from the drain. When he asked what she was doing, she replied, "I want to see where the water goes. Does it fall into the ground? Does it feed the plants?" Another time, she discovered the television and refused to move for 3 hours, staring at a cartoon show with wide eyes. "Humans make moving pictures for fun," she shouted. "This is amazing." Daniel tried to explain, but half the time Kaylee was already distracted by something else before he could finish. She asked about why humans wore shoes indoors, why they kept animals as pets, and why they worked so many hours each week. Her laughter filled the apartment often, but it also made the neighbors whisper. To them, she was either a miracle or a danger, and Daniel had no power to change their opinions. The first real clash happened one evening at dinner. Daniel had cooked pasta, simple and easy, but Kaylee had added far too much chili powder from the spice rack, curious about how it would change the flavor. She took a bite, gasped at the heat, and then burst out laughing. Liara, however, did not find it amusing. "You are careless," she said sharply. "You risk wasting food that was offered with respect." Kaylee frowned and snapped back, "You are too serious, Liara. Humans enjoy food by trying new things. Isn't that what we are here for?" The room went silent. Daniel sat between them, holding his fork awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Liara's eyes narrowed, but she said no more, finishing her meal in silence. Kaylee pouted, staring at the table. Daniel realized then that hosting aliens was not just about teaching them human life. It was also about keeping peace between them. Later that night, when the two aliens had gone to their room, Daniel sat on the couch rubbing his temples. He could hear them arguing softly through the wall, though he could not understand the words of their native tongue. He wondered if they even liked being here, or if they were simply fulfilling orders from their council. He wondered if he was failing as a host. The next morning, Liara surprised him by asking to follow him to work. Daniel hesitated. He worked in a small office, nothing special, and he worried about how his co-workers would react. But Liara insisted, explaining that it was important for her report to see how humans lived their daily lives. Kaylee, of course, demanded to come along as well, though Daniel feared she would cause trouble. In the end, he gave in. Walking through the city with two aliens at his side was like carrying a spotlight. People stopped and stared. Some waved nervously, others took pictures, and a few muttered words Daniel could not quite catch. Liara ignored them all, her expression calm. Kaylee waved back at everyone with a bright smile, as if she were the star of a parade. At the office, Daniel's co-workers could barely focus on their work. Some came forward shyly to ask questions, while others pretended to be too busy, though their eyes kept drifting toward the visitors. Liara examined the computers, the papers, and even the coffee machine, making notes constantly. Kaylee sat at Daniel's desk, spinning in his chair until she nearly fell off, laughing all the while. By the end of the day, Daniel was exhausted. His manager pulled him aside, whispering that the aliens were welcome but distracting. Daniel could only nod in apology. He led the two back home, wondering if his job would survive their presence. That evening, a new tension appeared. As they sat in the living room, Kaylee suddenly asked, "Daniel, why do humans allow others to tell them what to do all the time? Your boss, your government, even strangers in the street. You obey rules even when they make you unhappy. Why?" Daniel blinked, unsure how to answer. "Because rules keep things from falling apart," he said finally. "Without them, life would be chaos." Liara nodded slightly as if agreeing, but her expression was unreadable. Kaylee, however, frowned. "But isn't freedom more important than order? What makes humans different if they only follow commands?" Her words lingered in Daniel's mind long after she left the room. He had no clear answer. It was a simple question, but it cut deeper than anything he had expected. As he lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling once again, Daniel realized something important. This was not just about aliens learning human life. It was also about humans learning about themselves. The questions Kaylee asked, the silence in Liara's eyes, they were not accidents. They were mirrors reflecting truths that humans rarely thought about. And though he was only one man in one small apartment, Daniel knew that the days ahead would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. The city had begun to grow used to the sight of aliens living among humans. Yet the curiosity never faded completely. Whenever Daniel walked outside with Liara and Kaylee, people turned their heads, whispered, or followed with cautious eyes. Some were friendly, waving or asking polite questions. Others were colder, suspicious of the outsiders. Daniel tried to ignore the stares, but it became harder each day. His quiet life had become something public, and he could not escape it. Inside his apartment, however, the changes were even greater. Liara's discipline showed itself in new ways. She organized her belongings with perfect order, kept her notes in neat stacks, and even began arranging parts of the apartment as if she were running an inspection. The books on the shelf were suddenly aligned. The chairs set at exact angles, the table wiped spotless after every meal. Daniel appreciated the cleanliness, but sometimes it felt less like home and more like a laboratory. Kaylee, in contrast, brought a kind of wild energy. She decorated her side of the room with drawings she had made on scraps of paper, stuck to the wall with tape. She sang strange songs in her native tongue, and sometimes she invented little games using ordinary human objects. One afternoon, Daniel came home to find her balancing spoons on her nose, while Liara sat across the table, watching in quiet disapproval. The clash between them grew more obvious with each passing day. Liara treated the mission as serious work. Kaylee treated it as an adventure. Daniel stood in the middle, unsure how to keep peace between them. But then Daniel began to notice things that unsettled him. Late at night, when he thought both of them were asleep, he sometimes saw a faint glow from under their door. Once, when he wondered what kind of reports they were sending back to their council. Were they simply describing human life, or were they judging humanity as a whole? One evening, his suspicions deepened. He was washing dishes when he overheard Kaylee and Liara speaking through their translators, their voices low but serious. "The council must know," Liara said firmly. "Humans lack unity. They follow rules, yes, but they question them too often. They are unstable." Kaylee's voice rose in protest. "But they are creative. They adapt. Daniel finds solutions to problems in ways we never would. They are not perfect, but they are strong in their own way," Liara answered coldly. "Strength without discipline is dangerous." Daniel froze at the sink, the water still running. He wanted to pretend he had not heard, but the words carved themselves into his mind. The exchange program was not just about learning. It was a test, and humanity's future depended on how these aliens judged them. The following day, Daniel tried to act normal, but he felt tension in every glance, every word. He noticed how Liara wrote more notes than before, her expression even more serious. Kaylee seemed restless too, as if worried about what Liara might report. For the first time, Daniel realized he was not just a host. He was at the center of something far bigger than his own life. That evening, his fear grew when Liara left the apartment alone. She gave no explanation, only saying she needed to observe the city. Daniel watched from the window as she walked down the street, her posture straight, her eyes sharp. Hours passed before she returned, and when she did, her bag looked heavier than before. Kaylee noticed it too. When Liara went into the bedroom, Kaylee leaned close to Daniel and whispered, "She is sending more than reports. She is collecting things," Daniel frowned. "Collecting what?" Kaylee shook her head. I do not know everything. But I have seen her use devices not meant for this mission. She hides them. She does not trust humans, Daniel. She thinks your kind is not ready for the galaxy. The words made Daniel's stomach twist. And you? What do you think? Kaylee's eyes softened. I think humans are strange, yes, but also wonderful. You laugh, you argue, you build, you dream. You are not like the other species I have seen. You are more alive. Her voice carried warmth, but it did not ease Daniel's worry. If Liara's opinion was stronger than Kaylee's, what would the Council decide? Would they see Earth as a partner or as a danger to control? That night, Daniel could not sleep again. He lay awake, listening to the faint hum of the city outside and the even fainter sound of voices from the other room. The two aliens were speaking in their language again, their tones sharp, almost like they were fighting quietly. He could not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. There was a divide growing between them, and he was caught in the middle. For the first time since their arrival, Daniel felt something heavier than confusion or curiosity. He felt fear, not just for himself, but for all of humanity. If these two were here to decide Earth's fate, then every small moment, every choice, every word he spoke might matter more than he ever imagined. The crisis began one cold evening. Daniel was walking home from the store with bags of groceries when he noticed a group of people standing near his building. At first he thought they were curious neighbors, but then he saw their faces. They were not friendly. They carried signs with angry words painted in red. No aliens in our homes and Earth for humans. His stomach dropped. When he reached the entrance, one of the men stepped forward. You're the one with the aliens, aren't you? The man asked, his tone sharp. Daniel hesitated, clutching the bags tighter. They're my guests, he said. It's the law. The man spat on the ground. The law is wrong. They're spies. They'll take everything from us. Before Daniel could answer, another man pointed at the window of his apartment. Liara's shadow was visible behind the curtain, standing tall and watchful. Look at them, the man muttered. Like they own the place already. Daniel pushed past them and hurried inside, his heart racing. When he closed the door, Liara was already standing there, her eyes cold but calm. They were watching, she said simply. Kaylee came running from the kitchen, her face pale. Daniel, are they dangerous? Why are your people so angry? They're scared, Daniel said softly. Not everyone trusts what they don't understand. That night, the shouting outside grew louder. The small protest turned into a crowd. Daniel could hear chants rising from the street, demanding that the aliens leave. He felt trapped in his own home, the walls shaking with noise. Kaylee clung to him nervously while Liara stood by the window, her eyes never leaving the scene. At one point, Liara turned to him and said, This proves my point. Humans are unstable. They cannot even host two guests without turning to fear and anger. My report must reflect this truth. Daniel's chest tightened. That's not fair. They don't speak for all of us. People are afraid, yes, but most of us want peace. Most of us want to learn, Kaylee nodded quickly. He's right, Liara. Humans argue, but they also care. I have seen it in him. I have seen it in others. You cannot judge them all by a few angry voices. Liara's eyes narrowed. And yet those voices are loud. Loud voices shape history. The argument might have continued, but then a rock smashed through the window, shattering glass across the floor. Kaylee screamed, and Daniel pulled her back. Liara moved forward without fear, scanning the street below. The crowd roared with cheers after the throw, their anger echoing through the night. Daniel's hands shook as he swept Kaylee behind him. We have to call the police, he said. But Liara shook her head. No, this is exactly the kind of weakness they expect. Humans wait for others to protect them. Show me that you can protect yourselves. The challenge in her voice cut deep. Daniel wanted to shout back, but Kaylee placed a hand on his arm. Please, Daniel. Don't let them decide everything. Show her what humans are. Something in her eyes gave him strength. He took a deep breath and stepped outside onto the balcony. The crowd looked up, shouting curses, waving their signs. His legs felt weak, but he raised his voice anyway. Listen to me, he shouted. These two are my guests. They are here because the council asked it, and the law demands it. But more than that, they are here to learn. You're afraid of them because you don't know them. You think they'll take something from us, but they haven't taken anything. They've only watched, asked questions, and tried to understand. If we drive them out with anger, what does that say about us? That we're too weak to face something new? The crowd grew restless. Some shouted back, but others fell silent. Daniel's voice grew louder, stronger with each word. We always said humans wanted to reach the stars. Well, the stars came to us. And if we show nothing but fear and hate, then maybe we don't deserve them. I won't be part of that, not in my home. The silence that followed was heavy. Some of the protesters lowered their signs. A few walked away. Others stayed, still glaring, but the fire in their anger had dimmed. Slowly, the crowd broke apart, leaving only scattered voices behind. Daniel stepped back inside, his heart pounding. Liara stood by the broken window, watching him with unreadable eyes. Kaylee's face glowed with relief, and she whispered, "You were brave." For a long moment, Liara said nothing. Then she closed her notebook and placed it on the table. "You defended your people with words, not weapons," she said at last. "That is unusual." Daniel looked at her sharply. "It's human." Her expression softened only slightly, but she did not argue. Instead, she picked up the glowing cube from her bag and placed it carefully back inside. For the first time, Daniel thought he saw hesitation in her eyes. That night, after the glass was cleaned and the apartment was quiet again, Daniel sat on the couch staring at the stars beyond the broken window frame. Kaylee sat beside him humming softly, while Liara wrote nothing at all. For the first time, Daniel felt that maybe his voice mattered in ways he had never imagined. And though he was only one man in one small city, he had stood against fear and shown something different, something human. The morning after the protest, Daniel's apartment felt heavy with silence. The broken window had been covered with a sheet of wood, but the memory of glass shattering still echoed in his mind. Liara had said little since the crowd left, and Kaylee tried to keep the mood light, offering tea and humming quietly, but the tension was impossible to ignore. Daniel sat at the table, staring at the sunlight spilling across the floor. "This isn't going to stop," he finally said. "The law might protect you, but people's fear won't fade so quickly. Last night proved that." Kaylee nodded, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup. "Fear is powerful, but so is kindness. They saw you stand for us. Some listened." Liara closed her notebook and looked at him directly. "The council will not care about frightened crowds. They will care about what I report. And what I report must be true." Daniel felt a stab of worry. "And what truth will you tell them? That humans throw rocks at their guests? That we're not ready?" Liara's calm expression revealed nothing. "That is one truth. But it is not the only one. I saw something else last night. A human standing before his people and calming them without force. That is also truth." For the first time, Daniel noticed uncertainty in her eyes, like two sides of a scale she could not balance. He leaned forward. "Then tell them both. Show them we're not perfect, but we try. Show them that fear is real, but so is courage." Before Liara could answer, a soft chime echoed in the room. Kaylee's small wrist device glowed, and she touched it quickly. Her eyes widened. "It's the council," she whispered. Liara stood tall, straightening her posture as if preparing for judgment. Daniel's chest tightened. The device projected a faint blue light into the air, forming the image of a circle filled with shadows. Dozens of alien voices blended together, speaking in harmony that sounded both strange and beautiful. "Report," the voices said. Liara stepped forward, her face calm and her tone steady. She described her stay with Daniel, recounting everything from the daily routines to the night of the protest. She spoke of human kindness, of Kaylee's enthusiasm and Daniel's patience. But she also told them about the crowd, the anger, the fear. Her words were careful, balanced, but Daniel could feel how fragile the truth sounded when weighed against alien judgment. When Liara finished, Kaylee suddenly stepped forward. Her voice was trembling but clear. "I want to speak too," she said. "I have seen humanity's flaws, but I have also seen their heart. Daniel shared his home with us, not because of law, but because he chose to care. He defended us with nothing but words. That is rare. That is human." The circle of voices grew quiet. For a moment, only the faint hum of the device filled the room. Then one voice separated from the others. "And what does the human himself say?" "Speak." Daniel's stomach turned cold. He had not expected to be called. Slowly he stood, his palms sweating. "I'm just one man," he began. "I can't speak for all of Earth, but I'll say this. We're not perfect. We fight, we argue. We're scared of what we don't know, but we also dream bigger than our fear. We want to learn, to reach beyond the sky. If you judge us only by fear, then you'll miss what makes us human." His voice shook, but he didn't stop. Last night people came to my home angry and I can't deny their hate. But I faced them because I believe humanity can be more. That's what I want you to see. Not just our fear, our hope too. The silence that followed seemed endless. Liara's eyes flicked toward him, unreadable, while Kaylee smiled faintly as if proud of him. Finally, the council's voices returned. We have heard. Your words will be considered. The projection faded, leaving the room dim and still. Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His knees felt weak and he sank into the chair again. Kaylee rushed to his side, placing a hand on his shoulder. You did it. You spoke from your heart. Liara, however, stood motionless by the window, her eyes distant. After a long pause, she turned to Daniel. You risked much by speaking honestly. Most humans would try to hide their flaws before the council. You offered them openly. Daniel met her gaze. Because if you only see the good, then you won't see us at all. You'll see a lie. For the first time, Liara's expression softened, almost like a crack in stone. Perhaps, she said quietly. You are not what I expected. That evening, the three of them sat together in the living room. No one spoke much, but the silence felt different, less heavy, more thoughtful. Kaylee leaned against the couch, sketching little patterns on a tablet, while Liara continued to stare at the city lights. Daniel finally broke the silence. Do you think the council will decide soon? They already have part of the answer, Liara said. But what they choose may take time, perhaps even years, Kaylee smiled. Then we will stay and we will keep learning. Maybe in that time more humans will learn too. Daniel let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. 2 alien girls in my apartment and the future of Earth hanging on dinner conversations and broken windows. If someone told me this a year ago, I would have laughed. Yet here we are, Liara replied softly. Of Earth itself. Then one morning, the wrist device Kaylee wore chimed, glowing brighter than ever. The projection that appeared was larger, clearer, and more commanding than before. The council had called them directly. Their voices spoke together, layered and musical, demanding attention. The final assessment will be presented. Your household is requested to attend. Daniel's chest tightened. He had spoken before, defended humans before, and now it seemed that the moment of truth had arrived. He looked at Kaylee, who squeezed his hand encouragingly, and then at Liara, whose expression was unreadable but calm. Together, the three of them prepared. The council's projection filled the room with light and dozens of alien forms shimmered before them. Their eyes, glowing in colors unfamiliar to Daniel, seemed to peer into every corner of the apartment, every detail of their lives. Liara stepped forward first, presenting her observations clearly and concisely. She described Daniel's home, the routines, the culture, and the protest outside. She spoke of human curiosity, ingenuity, and adaptability, but also of fear, weakness, and hesitation. Her words were precise, almost surgical, laying out every aspect of what she had witnessed. Kaylee followed, her voice warmer and more personal. She told stories of laughter, of kindness, of courage that came in small and ordinary ways. She spoke of Daniel's honesty, his bravery in confronting the protest, and the way he treated them as guests with respect and trust. Her words painted a picture of humanity that was messy but alive, flawed but remarkable. When both reports were complete, the council's silence stretched across the room, heavy and expectant. Daniel felt sweat bead on his forehead. The weight of the world seemed to rest on his shoulders. He wondered if all his words, all Kaylee's observations, would be enough. He wondered if Liara's careful discipline would sway the decision toward skepticism, or if Kaylee's optimism could tip the balance in humanity's favor. Finally, a single voice separated itself from the rest. We have observed. We have heard. Humans are not perfect. They are afraid. They are inconsistent. They are unpredictable. Yet within these flaws lies something remarkable. They struggle, they dream, and they reach beyond their limits. Their courage is not silent. It is active, and it is real. The words washed over Daniel like a wave. He felt his heart lift. The council continued. This household has demonstrated the potential of humanity. One human standing firm against fear, showing care and bravery, has represented the spirit of an entire species. These 2 visitors, alien observers, have testified to both weakness and strength, showing that humanity cannot be judged by fear alone. Liara's posture shifted slightly. For the first time, she allowed herself a small smile, acknowledging the council's praise for Daniel's courage. Kaylee's face lit up with joy, her hands gripping Daniel's arm tightly. The council spoke once more. The decision is made. Earth shall be considered a partner in the intercultural exchange program. Humans will be welcomed into the greater union of species. Their faults are noted, but so are their virtues. They shall be given guidance, respect, and opportunity. This is the first step toward collaboration across worlds. Daniel felt the tension in his body release like a snapped rope. He laughed, a sound of relief and wonder, and Kaylee jumped up, spinning around the room in excitement. Liara, though calmer, nodded in acknowledgement, a quiet approval that meant more than words could say. As the projection faded, Daniel looked at his two guests and realized something profound. This was not just about them or the council. It was about humans proving themselves capable of thought, courage, and empathy. It was about showing that even ordinary people in small apartments and simple lives could reach beyond fear to create trust and understanding. Kaylee hugged him tightly, whispering, "You did it, Daniel. We all did it together." Liara placed her hand on his shoulder, her tone soft. "You showed what it means to be human. Not perfect, not flawless, but real, alive. And that matters more than anything else." For the first time since the aliens arrived, Daniel felt the apartment quiet, not with fear or tension, but with possibility. Outside, the city carried on as it always had, but inside he understood that something had changed forever. Humans were no longer only observers of the universe. They were participants, partners, and explorers. The day passed slowly. The three of them sat together, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments. The council's decision was official, but it felt like more than a ruling. It was recognition. Recognition that humanity, with all its imperfections, had something remarkable to offer. That night, Daniel looked up at the stars from his small balcony, Kaylee at his side, Liara nearby. He thought of the future, of the adventures and challenges that awaited, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled with certainty. Humanity had been seen, judged, and accepted, not because they were perfect, but because they were alive, courageous, and capable of hope. And for Daniel, for Kaylee, and even for Liara, the story was only beginning.